Pro Football Focus grades are in for LSU's win over Florida. We're diving in, locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. So LSU beats Florida 20-10, much to the delight of Brian Kelly, the chagrin of some offensively, and to the dismay of Brian Kelly, that some of you are displeased with the offense as we've been over. We do this every week. We go through the Pro Football Focus grades. And if you're an everydayer, you know this, but I'm going to give it, I'll say this as a preamble for those who maybe are finding this for the first time. I always look at Pro Football Focus as a metric, not the metric. It's just something to consider. It's something that will either confirm or disconfirm what your eyes saw. And it's just another thing to consider as you piece together the puzzle of a game and how we react to it. We can look at statistics from the game, and that tells us a giant part of the story, but it doesn't always tell us every part of the story, which is why I like to dive into Pro Football Focus, and in particular with PFF when we talk about the line of scrimmage, because especially in the offensive line, you don't have statistics on the offensive line that you can go by. So when and we all watch the ball naturally when we're watching a game. So we're not trained our eyes on the left guard to see what that person did every single play. That's why I like to look at PFF for some of this stuff. Anyway, so we'll dive into the offensive grade, the defensive grades, the special teams grades. I'll tell you what my takeaways are. And I hope you find it interesting. So let's start on the offensive side of the ball. And we'll always start with the top and go to the bottom. Offensively for LSU, it might surprise some that the highest graded player offensively was actually Garrett Nussmeier. And this does underscore what Brian Kelly has said. They are asking Garrett Nussmeier not to win the game for them like he had to do a year ago. Garrett Nussmeier is just being asked to go, I hate to say manage the game because it has such a negative connotation, but he's basically being asked, hey, don't get us beat. And he's doing that exceptionally well. So Nussmeier's overall grade, even with an interception, was a 78.5. His passing grade was a 77. His rushing grade was a 63. He actually had a run blocking grade for some reason. He graded out on 22 plays as a run blocker, but whatever. But I think what you have to look at with Nussmeier, whenever we look at these statistics, even though you're not seeing the 300-yard passing game, his effectiveness and efficiency is what's very good. Pro Football Focus graded 3 big-time throws in the game and only had 1 turnover-worthy play. The turnover-worthy play was the interception, which was mind-boggling. But the big-time throws were the touchdown to Xavier Thomas over the middle, the 65-yarder to Bauer Sharp over the middle. Then he had another deep throw over the middle that was ruled a drop by Aaron Anderson. There were actually 3 drops by LSU receivers in this game, 2 by Aaron Anderson for whatever that's worth. The interception was a terrible decision. It was on a 3rd and 27. It was at a point when LSU was up double digits. But even in spite of that one play, Garrett Nussmeier still graded out as the highest player offensively. After Garrett Nussmeier, the top 5, Xavier Thomas, Paul Mabenga, Tyree Adams, Aaron Anderson, and then a little hat tip, the 6th highest graded player overall was Braylon Moore, the center who played with a bum ankle. As Brian Kelly said, he acknowledged it was actually a high ankle sprain that he played with on Saturday. Now, who I really want to highlight here, remember, Mabenga and Adams are your left guard and left tackle. And what I would really like to highlight here is Paul Mabenga, because he has gotten an awful lot of criticism. And a year ago, he stepped into a very tough spot. Garrett Dellinger gets injured. And the game against Texas A&M, Mabenga goes in, and then he starts the rest of the season. And he was the lowest graded lineman and the weak link for the remainder of the season. But a year ago against Florida, and this is the comparison I'd like to make. So last year against Florida in Gainesville, Paul Mabenga's offensive grade was a 45 overall. His pass block grade was a 33. His run block grade was a 45. He allowed 6 hurries and 8 pressures. Okay. That was Paul Mabenga's day against Florida a year ago. When you look at the day Paul Mabenga had this go round, not only was he the second highest graded offensive lineman for LSU. He was the highest graded offensive lineman for LSU, third highest graded player. His pass blocking grade was a 75. Remember I told you last year it was a 33. He went from a 33 to a 75. His run blocking grade last year was a 45. On Saturday night, it was a 66. So from a 45 to a 66 in run blocking. And overall, he went from a 45 to a 67. I'm not telling you need to throw a ticker tape parade because your starting left guard graded out at a 67. But a year ago, he allowed 6 hurries and 8 pressures. On Saturday night, in 39 snaps at left guard, he allowed 0. Not 1 hurry, not 1 pressure, and he was your highest graded offensive lineman. You want to criticize when things don't go well? Fine. Give credit where it's due. Paul Mabenga was a liability a year ago in Gainesville, and he was really good for you on Saturday night. The entire offensive line as a unit struggled with run blocking, but how many times do we talk about this? It was the only conversation it seemingly we had all week leading up to the Florida game. The one singular thing that Florida could do that could wreck the game is what they did a year ago with their 7 sacks, their 11 TFLs, the 14 hurries, the 20, all that sort of stuff. In the game on Saturday night, Garrett Nussmeier was not sacked. The offensive line allowed just 2 pressures and 2 hurries the entire game. Cohen Eccles allowed 1. Weston Davis allowed 1. That's it. Garrett Nussmeier was clean all night. And that goes back to the passing chart, right? When Brian Kelly was ranting after the game, I understood within all of the rants, whenever he was talking about the game plan, what they were trying to do. The objective was, don't let Florida do the one thing they do really well that could compromise you, and that's rush the passer against a suspect offensive line. So Garrett Nussmeier in this game threw 3 passes the entire game that traveled beyond 20 yards. That's it. 3. When you look at passes within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, 16 of his passes were within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. 6 of them were behind the line of scrimmage. The bottom line is, again, they were not going to let the Florida defensive front beat them. Period. There's no other way to say it. A year ago in the game against Ole Miss, for context, Garrett Nussmeier attempted double digits, 16 passes that went beyond 20 yards. That was the win in Baton Rouge against Ole Miss last year. 16 passes beyond 20 yards in the air. On Saturday night, 3. It's very clear what they were doing. They were getting rid of the ball quickly. They were not asking the offensive line to hold up for 5, 7-step drops. It was get the ball out, play great defense, play field position, and win the game the manner in which they did. And LSU was able to do that. The strategy worked. I'm not telling you it was aesthetically pleasing, and I'm not telling you that's going to work against everybody, because there's going to be teams that come along that are good offensive teams that are going to move the ball and are going to score more than Florida did or more than Clemson did in week 1. But LSU's defense is awesome, and LSU's offense isn't generally going to have to go get into shootouts, which I don't think any of us want to see that anymore. But ultimately, this was a team that knew their strategy going in, and they executed it. Now, I want to hat tip Braylon Moore as well. His pass blocking grade was an 83. His overall grade was a 60.9, but his pass block grade was an 83. Tyree Adams' pass blocking grade was an 87. Paul Mabenga, a 75. So your center and the left side of your line performed well. If you look at the other side of the line, that's where you have a little bit of a problem. If you look at the bottom 5 players offensively, your lowest graded player was Weston Davis. Second lowest was Juwan Johnson. A fumble will do that to you. Josh Thompson, Cohen Eccles, Chris Hilton. Those were your bottom 5 graded out offensively. Now, Weston Davis's overall grade was a 34. Josh Thompson's overall grade was a 49. It's just unacceptable. Like, that has got to improve. Um, 2 of your 3 lowest graded players were your 2 starting offensive linemen on the right side of the line. And you just cannot succeed if the right side of your line, if half of your line is playing that poor. Davis had a 44 in the run game. He was a 65 in pass protection, but he was flagged 3 times as well. His season-long grade for Weston Davis right now is a 40. His run blocking grade is a 36. It's not been good. Davis was a former 5-star. He has tremendous ability. We all know that. But so far through 3 games, he has not played well enough to be a starter in the SEC. And you don't really have another option behind him right now. So that's got to improve. Josh Thompson has been very good this year, but his 46 run blocking grade and 60 in pass protection was just not good enough. You brought him in via the transfer portal to be a stalwart right there in the center of your offensive line, and that just wasn't good enough on Saturday night. Cohen Eccles only played 16 snaps, and he wasn't very good either. 50 in the running game, of 43 in pass protection. So all that to say, you won the game, but it does illustrate how we say sometimes the Pro Football Focus grades are either going to confirm or disconfirm what you see. In this instance, it confirms very much what you see there on the offensive line. When you look at the highest graded players overall on the team, well, naturally, they were going to be on the defensive side of the ball. And that's what we're going to talk about as we continue here on Locked On LSU. It's your team every day. Quick question for all the college football fans. If you could go back in time and sit in the front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, what hat would you be wearing? Yep, I said hat. For me, it was the game. They're not just hats. They're the same vintage styles that fans wore back in the 80s and the 90s. And in my case, the early 2000s when I was at LSU. And guess what? They still go for the same price they did back then. Use the code LOCKEDON, one word, locked on, and get your vintage hat for $16.99. So head to thegamecaps.com. That's thegamecaps.com. Grab your team's classic bar or retro circle design and use the code locked on for an exclusive discount because legends wear the game. Today's show is also brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere. Get that boost when you need it. Listen, I love 5-Hour Energy. I've been taking them for years before my 3-hour radio show. Gives me incredible focus and energy to make it through a 3-hour show. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store and online at 5hourenergy.com. That's 5hourenergy.com or at Amazon today. So we talked offense. Let's flip it over and talk about the defensive side of the ball now for LSU and Florida. It probably will come as no surprise that overall the defense sort of won the day. Now I'm going to give you a caveat. Typically when we do this, I'll mention players that played enough snaps to qualify. Well, Deshaun Spears was the highest graded player overall for LSU with a 97.9. Of course, he came away with 2 interceptions, a pick 6. Brian Kelly gave him the game ball, but he only played 9 snaps. Deshaun Spears played 9 snaps in the game. 9 snaps. He was targeted 3 times. They made 1 catch against him, but the other 2, of course, were interceptions, and one of them went for a pick 6. So hat tip to Deshaun Spears for an awesome game and the highest graded player. But after that, Mansour Delane, surprise, surprise. West Weeks, who would have been your leading tackler, but for the injury. A.J. Halsey, P.J. Woodland, then Dom McKinley, D.J. Pickett. So if I look at the top 5 players, including Deshaun Spears, what do they have in common? Deshaun Spears, Mansour Delane, West Weeks, A.J. Halsey, P.J. Woodland. 4 of the 5 are defensive backs. Can we please just take a quick second, step back, and give a major hat tip and attaboy to Corey Raymond for all those. And look, I don't need to go like do an old takes exposed on Twitter. You know who you are. There's plenty of you who were criticizing Corey Raymond when he left. Don't let the door hit you. He was the problem, all that stuff. Can you now see how stupid that was? I'm not calling you stupid. I'm saying that was a stupid opinion. And I said it plenty at the time. Corey Raymond was never the problem at LSU. He never stopped recruiting. When he was done here, he had recruited guys like Eli Ricks and Dwight McGlothern and Jay Ward and Cordell Flott, and the next generation was going to be Radarius Jones and Demarius McGee and guys like that he liked a lot. Sage Ryan was a 5-star that he recruited. Mo Hampton was a 5-star that he recruited. And Ed Ogeron gets fired. Corey Raymond's not retained. All those guys left. And then Brian Polian decided to go recruit 3-stars from Las Vegas and go in the portal after guys like Deuce Chestnut. And you hired a coach in Robert Steeples who had never been a college coach, and his first job in college is at DBU. Good luck. Didn't go great. You bring Corey Raymond back, and all of a sudden, what do you have? Yeah, you've got 5-stars like DJ Pickett coming in, making a giant impact immediately. You're hitting in the transfer portal. And then, oh, by the way, there's also guys like PJ Woodland, who was a 3-star, but because Corey Raymond knows what he's looking for in a skill set, said, I want that guy. And now PJ Woodland in year 2 has become a starter for you and a really good player. He's beaten out Ashton Stamps. Ashton Stamps, who started for 2 years at LSU and led the league in PBUs last season, is on the bench now because PJ Woodland passed him up. Hat tip to Corey Raymond. In any event, it was Spears, Delane with an 80, West Weeks with a 76, AJ Halsey with a 74, and then PJ Woodland also with a 74. Listen, this was one of those days where you go get 5 interceptions. Naturally, we're going to talk a lot about the secondary. Mansour Delane was exceptional. He graded 79.1 in coverage. Was targeted 6 times, only allowed 2 catches that went for 12 yards, and he also got a pressure on DJ Lagway. Halsey got the interception right before halftime, which set up the Damian Ramos field goal that gave LSU the lead before half. His coverage grade was a 74.7. That is outstanding. He did get hit for a pair of missed tackles, but obviously the interception came at a massive spot. And we talked about PJ Woodland as well. And by the way, PJ Woodland had a PBU that almost became an interception. He jumped a slant route, he got his hands on it, almost came away with the pick, but he was only targeted twice and neither was completed, had a pressure as well. It was great to see PJ Woodland have the day that he did. Now, when you go to the bottom 5, I say this often, like somebody's got to be at the bottom. Even on a day where your defense plays as well as it did, I mean, you're grading every player, somebody's still got to be at the bottom. And the concerning, it's not a concern, it's just the thing that stands out. So your lowest graded player was Tylen Singleton, but he only had 7 snaps. Then it was Whit Weeks, who only played 3 snaps, obviously. Then Gabe Relaford, Bernard Gooden, Zach Weeks, Patrick Payton, if you're going from the bottom to the top. So you had 3 starters there. And Whit Weeks, who will cancel out because he only played 3 snaps. But Relaford, who played 35 snaps, Bernard Gooden, who played 51, and then Payton, who played 53, all down near the bottom. And what's interesting about this is that a week ago, if you remember, when we were here, we were lauding the defensive line. It was the defensive line that had the massive day. And it was a lot. It was Don McKinley. It was Gabe Relaford. It was Ahmad Bro. It was the sophomore defensive lineman that had a massive day. And Bernard Gooden has rated at the top of this list was certainly at the top of the list against Clemson and was really good last week as well. Sometimes it's just not going to be your day. But it's one of those instances where you can look at LSU overall and depending on the opponent on the night, it will go by which unit is more effective. Like, again, a week ago, the defensive line shone. On Saturday against Florida, clearly it was the defensive backfield that had their time and their day against DJ Lagway and that offense. Harold Perkins had an outstanding tackling grade at 83. He just continues to be just a force on this defense. And I'd be remiss if I didn't at least point out West Weeks, who did leave with an injury. He finished with 12 tackles on the day. And he was just awesome. Now, the only reason his grade wasn't higher was that his coverage grade, I don't know why, they targeted West Weeks 6 times and they made 6 receptions against him. Otherwise, he might have been your highest graded player. But in his 47 snaps, he was fantastic. And that's a guy who um, a year ago was behind Greg Penn at linebacker, was injured. They decided to redshirt him so he could come back, and all 3 weeks brothers could play together. And what an amazing boost that has been for this defense. Now, it was great to see Devon Keys step in and have 14 tackles and lead the team playing the entire game with Whitweeks out. By the way, Devon Keys, just to illustrate sometimes how the PFF grades don't always jive with the eye test. Devon Keys was your leading tackler. He had, 14 tackles. Well, he was the 11th highest graded player defensively, right in the middle of the pack with a 61 overall. They gave him a 59 in coverage. They gave him a 55 on his pass rush, but his tackling grade was a 76. So obviously you go lead the team in tackles, you're going to have a high tackling grade. And that's what Devon Keys did. So fantastic to see from the defensive backfield and some of those young linebackers that stepped up in a big spot for LSU defensively in this football game. It's very clear what LSU's approach was in their game on Saturday night against Florida. Now, the third part of that was they needed a big day on special teams, and they got it. We do have special teams grades for the Florida game as well. I'll share those with you when we come back to wrap up Locked on LSU. It's your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. It's quick, it's easy, and honestly, my favorite way to follow along with football. Love checking the projections like Josh Allen, more or less 270 passing yards. Saquon Barkley, more or less 1 rushing touchdown. You get it. The best part, even if one of your picks misses, Prize Picks invented the flex play so you can still double your money. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 play. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. And we're also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here. FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel. It fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. The third phase for LSU on Saturday night special teams was absolutely outstanding. Damian Ramos hit both of his field goal attempts. The big one right before half was certainly massive. And then what can we say about Grant Chadwick? He punted 7 times. 4 of them went for 50 yards or more, along of 58. 4 punts pinned inside the 20-yard line. He had 1 go out at the 2-yard line, down them at the 6 another time. LSU had their strategy in this football game, as Brian Kelly discussed afterwards. It was very clear. They were going to try to possess the football. They were going to play field position. They were going to make DJ Lagway and that offense drive the length of the field against them. They were not going to make mistakes and let that Florida defensive line beat them. But a big part of that was obviously playing field position. And my goodness, did Grant Chadwick and Aaron Burrell, by the way, my goodness, did they comply? It was an outstanding day for LSU. Burrell with a kickoff grade of 71.5. Damian Ramos made his kicks both on PAT and on field goal. The thing that I'll tell you, though, that I find really interesting about this special teams unit, we focus a lot on the specialists. We focus on the kickers, on Ramos, on Burrell, on Grant Chadwick. We focus on the returners as well. Berrien Brown and Xavier Thomas are both such weapons in the return game. Also, the Tigers, the thing that did ding them is they did have 1 penalty on special teams. It was Tyree Adams who had the false start on the field goal. But the other thing that I think is so important to mention is the coverage units. And this is one of the things I think that is a great differentiator for this LSU team from previous Brian Kelly teams. When you are as deep as LSU is, like they are this year, you can take guys who have been in the past even key contributors, and they become special teams players. For example, when you look at the highest graded player on special teams is Javen Toviano. Second highest graded, DJ Pickett. Third highest graded special teams player, Devon Keys, who led your team in tackles, by the way. Then Chris Hilton. Next, that's your top 4 on special teams. Then guys like Charles Ross, Silas Hall, Prince of Malbrew, CJ Jim Coyley. You have guys that are making their way on special teams, but Toviano, Pickett, Keys, Hilton were your top 4 guys on special teams, and they're helping you tremendously. Like, those are dudes who are starting caliber players that are playing special teams for you. It's why your third unit is going to be outstanding this year, that third phase. We've waited for Brian Kelly's teams to be awesome in special teams. It looks like this year, because of the depth and the specialists, they finally are. All right. That's our look at the Pro Football Focus numbers for the LSU game against Florida. Brian Kelly's going to meet with reporters on Monday. They'll turn the page and start looking towards Southeastern Louisiana. And I do think it's going to be a really interesting week as we build towards Southeastern, because this is one of those exhale spots on the schedule, and you have an opportunity to do it. You can get West Weeks rest. You can get Braylon Moore a week off if he needs it to stay off that ankle. You can get Trey'Dez Green another week to get healthy before you go to Ole Miss. There's some key guys that you can maybe get some rest to this week, and that gives you an opportunity to get younger guys more experience as well. This could also be an opportunity, finally, to see this offense pop a little bit, stuff the stat sheet, and show off what they're able to do, because they're going to be so physically superior to Southeastern Louisiana. So all that's coming up as we build throughout this week toward LSU and Southeastern. It's a big moment for the Locked On Podcast Network. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV presents College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside 2-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, and it's only on Fire TV. Hey, thanks so much for making us your first listen every single day. If you're on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day. It's Locked On LSU, your team every day.